Suitoin, and today we'll be doing our first ever ASMR story time. I'm really excited. This is exactly the type of content I've wanted to do forever, and it took a bit of time because I wanted to figure some things out and I wanted to, find a good direction. But I think I have all of that figured out now, so we can finally start putting out more videos at a more sustainable rate. If you hear any sounds in the background, that's probably that's probably my dogs. But today we will be doing our first storytime ASMR. This story is based in Inescovia. It is about Yeighest, Yokamono, and Quaviy. Now, with these types of storytime ASMR, they do revolve around the lore of my world. However, when it comes to these type of videos, you really don't need to go back and go forth to different videos to say oh, did I miss out on something? It seems like I'm kind of out the loop. If something needs to be explained, I will do the best I can to explain it. I'm gonna get some water real quick. But so you don't need to worry about that. Anything that needs to be explained, I will explain it. There won't be a necessarily an order to these videos. It will mainly just be, unless it's a part 1, part 2, part 3. Okay. But I think that's enough talking about that. I just wanted to give you some info on these type of videos because I don't think I've ever gone to in detail as to what this channel is going to be about as a whole. Maybe I'll make a video about that in the lore ASMR video where I talk about the map lore ASMR, which is probably coming out either this week or next week. But I think that it's time for you guys to have a nice slumber or nice relaxing time listening to one of my favorite stories in Escovia. But of course, we cannot start any video without saying our mantra that ventures rest to boost the effects of today's ASMR. You can say them if this is your first time here. Welcome. You can either say it back, you can whisper it back, or you can listen to me. Either way is effective. The guildhouse heart is safe and deep. The final story drifts to sleep. So sheath the sword you fought to keep. For now, the quiet hours creep. Excellent. Good. Now, we can finally start with the story. And I promise you, this is going to make a lot of sense once I make the map lore video. Well, it will still make sense, but you don't know where Inescovia is yet, but you will. The video's coming out. I promise you. Inescovia was once a secluded tundra, with the winds and snowstorms so fierce, no life could inhabit its treacherous lands. A fisherwoman thrown about at sea, washed up on one of Inescovia's glaciers, with her ship sunk and morality crushed. Just as he was about to jump into the water to sink to the icy depths, her cracked feet and long snow-white hair mirrored by the chosen casket as she looked down, a Yeighest spirit appeared in the young girl with dragon scales, 2 fiery horns, and 4 furred black twin tails dancing around her petite frame in front of her. Now you're probably asking, what's a Yeighest? Or why does she have such an unusual description? A Yeighest is sort of what you would call a deity or a god from your world. But, however, unlike most of the religions in your realm that make them up to be almighty, all benevolent species, Yeighest are born for every living being in existence in Callixtus. That's right. In a way, all of us in Callixtus are given our own personal guardian at birth. Even before birth, they're chosen for us specifically. Though some Yeighest are born with higher or lower attributes, such as an affinity to Serenum, which we've talked about before, which is the spiritual essence, similar to a term you know as magic. All of them are equal in servitude. Yeighest, though, are only able to be perceived by their physical companion when they're in a pivotal decision in their life. For instance, a child building up courage to stand up to a bully, a hardened warrior experiencing fear against an enemy with seemingly no flaws, or maybe even an aristocrat deciding between 2 conflicts, testing his humility. However, for Quaviy, it's a shame hers had to appear just as she was considering to end her life. Oh, alright, I didn't give you her name. I'm new to this whole storytelling thing, so you have to be, patient with me, patient. But the fisherwoman is Quaviy. Yes, Quaviy. So, there she stood, this fisherwoman, whose life had been scored clean by the sea, leaving nothing but the salt-crusted grit of despair. Her reflection in the ice below showed a ghost's hollow cheeks, eyes that had seen the abyss and found it boring, and that shock of snow-white hair, which was usually tied back in her practical braid, but now whipped around her face like a blizzard of its own. She was looking at her end, and the only thing she felt was a profound tiredness. And then that's when she appeared, the Yeighest. Quaviy didn't flinch. She didn't scream. Her mind was too waterlogged for surprise. She simply stared. The little girl, no, that wasn't right. The little creature before her was an impossible splash of color and life against the endless white. The horns, you see, they didn't just look fiery. They gave off a gentle, shimmering heat that Quaviy could feel on her frozen cheeks. The 4 tails, each tipped with what looked like silver frost, swished and curled with a life of their own, like curious cats sniffing the air. Her eyes were the color of molten gold, and they held no judgment, only a deep, unnerving curiosity. "It's a long way down there," the creature said. Her voice was not what Quaviy expected. It wasn't the boom of a deity or the whisper of a spirit. It sounded like small bells chiming in a soft breeze. Clear, melodic, and impossibly young. Quaviy finally found her own voice, a dry rasp that hurt her throat. "What are you?" you? The little Yeighest tilted her head, her golden eyes blinking slowly. I am you, or rather, I am yours. My name is Yokamono. The tails danced with a little more energy at the mention of her name. And you, Quaviy, are at a crossroads. A very, very important one. That's why I'm here. Quaviy gave a bitter, broken laugh that turned into a coughing fit. A crossroads. One path leads to a frozen death. The other, she gestured around at the desolate landscape. A wasteland of ice and howling wind leads to a different frozen death. Some choice. That's where you're wrong, Yoka chirped, taking a small step forward. Her feet, which were scaled like her skin, made no sound on the ice. There are always more than two paths. You just can't see them yet. Your eyes are still full of sea salt and sorrow. This was it then. The goat had finally cracked her mind. She was having a conversation with a four-tailed demon child on the edge of the earth. Strangely, the thought didn't frighten her. It was almost calming. If this was madness, it was at least more interesting than the crushing silence. Why now? Quaviy asked, her voice a little stronger. If you're my guardian, where were you when my nets tore? When the storm hit, when my ship was being splintered in the firewood by the waves? Yoka's cheerful expression didn't falter, but a thoughtful death. How do you pronounce that word, death? Gosh darn, I'm sorry for ruining. No, locking entered her golden eyes. I was there, but you weren't at a crossroads then. You were a fisherwoman fighting a storm. You knew what to do. You fought. You survived. That is not a choice. That is instinct. But this, Yoka gestured with a small, scaled hands toward the churning water below. This is a decision to let the instinct die, to choose nothingness over a future you cannot see. That is the most pivotal moment of all, and so, here I am. Everything she said made a strange kind of sense that Quaviy's exhausted mind couldn't argue with. She sank to her knees on the glacier, the cold seeping through her worn trousers, but the gentle heat from Yoka's horn seemed to keep the worst of it at bay. She looked at the small being properly for the first time. The scales on her arms and face weren't harsh. They shimmered with the soft colors of sunrise on water. Pinks, blues, and pale greens. She was beautiful in a wild and impossible way. So you're here to stop me, Quaviy whispered. No, Yoka said simply. I'm here to show you the third path, but you have to walk it yourself. Yoka turned and pointed a tiny clawed finger inland towards the heart of the raging blizzard. This land, in Escovia, it was not always like this. It is not dead, it is merely sleeping, and it is having a nightmare. Now you have to understand that in Escovia, the weather in Escovia that Quaviy knows about, she knew it as a myth, a legend sailors used to scare the young deckhands. A place on the map marked only with eternal land of night's frost. The idea that it was once anything else was as absurd as, well, the creature standing in front of her. A nightmare, Quaviy repeated dumbly. A very cold one, Yoka confirmed, her foretails twitching in agreement. A long time ago, something of immense power was wounded here. Its sorrow leached into the ground, into the air, and froze everything solid. The wind you hear, that is its lonely cry. The snow, its endless tears. It has forgotten how to wake up. Quaviy stared into the swirling, white maelstrom. It had always seemed like a force of nature, mindless and brutal. But to think of it as a living grief, it changed things. It made the world feel a little less empty. What does that have to do with me? She asked. I'm a fisherwoman with no sailboat, no nets, and no home. But you have something else, Yoka said, her golden eyes twinkling. She took another step closer and gently tapped a finger on Quaviy's chest, right over her heart. You have an ember. Every living thing does. A little spark of warmth, and well, most are content to let their ember warm only themselves. But yours could become a fire. You have hair of snow and a heart that has known the deepest cold of loss. You understand the ice, Quaviy. That is why the sea brought you here. You're the only one who can wake this land up. The proposition was insane, utterly, completely, and beautifully insane. And for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, a feeling other than despair began to stir in Quaviy's chest. It wasn't hope, not yet. It was more like a flicker of defiance. The world had taken everything from her. What if she could build something new? What if she could take this wasteland and make it live? She looked down at her hands, cracked and calloused from years of hauling nets. They were strong hands. She looked back at Yoka, this impossible guardian, born from her own spirit, and she made her choice. Okay, Quaviy said. The whirl, the word, a puff of light in the frigid air. She pushed herself up, her joints groaning in protest. Okay, what do we do? A grin spread across Yoka's face, revealing tiny pointed teeth. Now we walk. Past tense. Sorry, she announced cheerfully. We walked to the heart of the nightmare. And so began the legend. The story of the woman with snow white hair and the spear with horns of fire. The journey was not an easy one. I hope you weren't expecting it to be. This isn't one of those tales where the hero suddenly develops magnificent powers and conquers all evil by lunchtime. No, this was a story built on footsteps. For days they walked. The wind was a physical beast, clawing and biting at them, trying to tear the warmth from Quaviy's body. Yoka, being a spirit, was immune to the cold. But she never strayed far from Quaviy's side, and the gentle aura of heat from her horns was the only thing that kept Quaviy from freezing solid. Yoka taught her things. How to find the most solid ice by listening to the sound her boots made. How to read the patterns in the blowing snow to predict When would it be at its fiercest? How to find Serena? And I mentioned that before, didn't I? Serena, spiritual essence, magic. Yoka explained that it was in everything, but it was thin and diluted in the most of the world. Here in Escovia, it was different. The land slumber had caused the serenum to boil and crystallize. It looked like a faint, blue glowing moss growing in the sheltered lee of ice formations. Eat it, Yoka instructed on the third day, pointing to a patch. Quaviy hesitated. Eat magic moss. It will keep you warm from the inside, Yoka insisted. It's what the land dreams of. Think of it as soul food. Trusting her guide, Quaviy scraped a small amount of glowing frost from the ice and placed it on her tongue. It was shockingly cold at first, but then a deep, penetrating warmth spread through her chest, chasing away the gnawing chill in her bones. It tasted of ozone, winter berries, and a profound stillness. It was the first thing she had eaten since her ship went down, and it felt more nourishing than any meal she'd ever had. Their bond grew with every step. Quaviy would tell Yoka stories of the sea, of the different kinds of fish, of the feel of the sun on her face. Yoka, in turn, would explain the nature of the world in a way Quaviy had never considered, speaking of Yeighest and the flow of serenum as if it were the most normal thing in existence. One evening, sheltering in a cave covered by the wind, Yoka watched as Quaviy tried to coax a spark from 2 pieces of ice-crusted driftwood she found. Her hands were numb, her movements clumsy and exhausted. You're doing it wrong, Yoka said gently. It's a bit hard without flint and steel, Quaviy grumbled. You don't need them, Yoka replied. You have the ember inside you. You just need to call it. Call to it. What am I supposed to do? Shout at my own chest. Yoka giggled, the sound echoing in the small cave. Sort of. Close your eyes. Feel the warmth from the serenum you ate. Find it. Now, think of the warmest thing you can remember. The hottest day, on your boat, the feel of hot soup after a long day in the cold, the anger you felt when the storm took your ship. Hold that feeling. Now, push it into your hands. Quaviy closed her eyes. It felt foolish, but she did as she was told. She focused, pushing past the cold, past the hunger, past the grief. She found that little spark, that stubborn point of light deep within her. She felt it with memories of sunshine and fury. She imagined that heat flowing down her arms into her frozen fingertips. When she opened her eyes, a tiny, flickering orange flame was dancing in the palm of her hand. She gasped, and the flame vanished, but she had seen it. It was real. See, Yoka said, her 4 eyes, her 4 tails, wagging with pride. You are the fire and the frost, Quaviy. You just forgot. From then on, their journey changed. Quaviy practiced, learning to call the flame at will. It was small, barely enough to warm her hands or melt snow for water, but it was hers. It was a weapon against the cold, a beacon against the darkness. It was hope. They finally reached what Yoka called the Villaresque. It was a vast, frozen lake, so smooth and black, it looked like a sheet of obsidian. In the center of the lake, stood a single colossal spire of ice, glowing with a faint, sorrowful blue light. The blizzard was fierce as here, circling the spire like a vortex of despair. The heart of the nightmare is in there, Yoka said, her voice quiet for the first time. The wounded spirit of Indiscovia is bound to that spire. We have to reach it. As they stepped onto the lake, the ice groaned beneath them. The wind howled with a new personal fury. It wasn't just a cold anymore. It was filled with the whispers of doubt and loss, echoes of Quaviy's own past. You failed. You lost everything. You are alone. It knows we are here, Yoka stated, her small frame tense. It will try to break you. It will use your own sorrow against you. Quaviy stilled herself, the small flame flickering in her cupped hands. Let it try, she said, her voice raw but steady. I've heard it all before. As they walked towards the spire, figures began to rise from the black ice. They were vaguely human-shaped, but made of snow and frozen rage. Their eyes were hollow voids, and they shambled towards Quaviy, their movements silent and menacing. The first one reached her, its icy claws wiping at her face. On instinct, Quaviy thrust her hand forward, the small flame touching the creature. It recoiled with a hiss, like water on a hot skillet. A chunk of his chest melting away. It didn't stop, but it faltered. She had a weapon. For what felt like hours, she fought her way across the lake. Yoka darting around, calling out warnings and weaknesses. Quaviy was no warrior, but she was a survivor. She used her flame not like a sword, but like a tool. A small, precise torch to a knee joint to make a creature stumble. A quick flash to blind another. She didn't destroy them. She just pushed them back, one weary step at a time. Her own inner warmth, her only shield against the howling despair. Finally, battered and exhausted, she reached the base of the spire. It pulsed with a cold blue light that seemed to drain all strength from her. An opening, like the entrance to a cathedral of ice, beckoned her inside. I cannot go any further, Yoka said, her form shimmering. This is a sorrow of the land, a physical place. My fight was on the outside, guiding your spirit. This last step, you must take it alone. Quaviy looked at her friend, her guardian, and nodded. She was afraid, but she was no longer the broken woman on the glacier's edge. She cupped the small flame in her hands, holding it close to her chest like a prayer, and stepped into the heart of Indiscovia's winter. The journey wasn't over. In fact, I suppose you can say this is where the story really begins. But that's a tale for another time. Thank you for listening. If you're still awake or you're heading into your slumber, I hope you have a good night or a good rest. And I will see you in the next one.